It happened without warning. No cameras, no press release, no royal announcement. Just a locked door deep within Balmoral. And a moment that could quietly redefine the future of the monarchy. The keys, symbols of power, control, and legacy were handed to Catherine in total secrecy. But why now? And more importantly, who didn't want the world to know this had happened? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Something about this moment feels different, not ceremonial, not symbolic in the way royal gestures are carefully staged for public consumption. This was something else entirely controlled, calculated, and most of all, hidden. Balmoral has always carried an unspoken weight within royal circles, not merely as a place of retreat, but as a fortress of decisions that never reach the public unchanged. And now, in a moment so recent, it almost feels unreal. Catherine has been drawn into its most protected space. The urgency of it this 1 minute ago shift suggests something unfolding in real time, something that could not wait, something that required absolute discretion. Behind that locked door, far from the polished image of royal life, the atmosphere would not have been one of celebration, but of quiet gravity. A private room, restricted not by physical barriers alone, but by generations of unspoken rules, became the setting for a transfer that defied expectation. The keys themselves, small, almost ordinary in appearance, carry a meaning that far outweighs their form. They represent access, authority, and something even more dangerous, trust. And trust, within the monarchy, is never given lightly, especially not in silence. What makes this moment even more unsettling is Catherine's position within it. For years, she has been perceived as steady, composed, almost predictable in her role. Yet this act places her at the center of something far more complex. This was not a public acknowledgement of duty, it was a private elevation of influence. And the fact that it happened without formal protocol, without witnesses, without even the faintest acknowledgement from official palace channels, raises a question that cannot be ignored. Was this meant to remain hidden forever? Or was it simply too sensitive to be revealed yet? The silence from the palace is perhaps the loudest detail of all. In an institution where even the smallest movements are documented and shared, this absence feels deliberate, controlled, strategic. It suggests that whatever has just occurred carries implications that extend beyond tradition, beyond ceremony, and into the fragile balance of power that exists behind the royal facade. And within that silence, there already whispers subtle, almost imperceptible tensions that hint at something shifting beneath the surface. Because when something this significant happens in complete secrecy, it rarely exists in isolation. It ripples outward, touching relationships, alliances, and hierarchies that have long remained stable. And while the world remains unaware, those within the royal circle are not. They understand what this means, even if they refuse to acknowledge it openly. The question is not whether this moment matters, it's how deeply it will reshape everything that follows. But the secrecy of that room only deepens the mystery, because Balmoral has never been just a residence. It has always been something far more dangerous. To the public, Balmoral is a retreat, quiet, scenic, almost peaceful. But behind its stone walls lies a different truth, one whispered only among insiders. The hunting lodge, in particular, has long been considered the monarchy's most guarded inner sanctum. Decisions made there never reach the public unchanged. And now Catherine holds its keys, but what exactly has she been given access to? Because Balmoral was never designed to be just an escape. It was built, shaped, and quietly preserved as something far more strategic, a place where distance from the world creates freedom from scrutiny. Within those walls, the monarchy becomes something else entirely, not symbolic, not ceremonial, but operational. The hunting lodge, especially, exists at the very center of that transformation. It is not simply a room or a building, it is a threshold, a dividing line between what the public is allowed to see and what is deliberately kept hidden. And once that line is crossed, there is no returning to innocence. For decades, whispers have surrounded that lodge. Not loud enough to confirm, but persistent enough to unsettle. Decisions believed to have shaped the monarchy's direction, alliances formed in silence, conflicts resolved behind closed doors, strategies agreed upon without record, have all been traced back to that isolated space. It is where conversations happen without consequence, at least on the surface. Because what emerges from those walls is never the raw truth. It is refined, controlled, reshaped into something the world can accept. And that alone makes the lodge more powerful than any throne. There is something deeply unsettling about the isolation it demands. No interruptions, no outside influence, just silence, thick, deliberate, almost suffocating. It is in that silence that control is established, reinforced, and sometimes even challenged. Those who enter are not merely participants. They are players in a quiet, high-stakes game where every word carries weight and every pause can alter outcomes. And access to that environment has never been granted lightly. It is earned, guarded, and above all, restricted. Which is why Catherine's presence in this equation feels so significant, because the lodge has never been a place for those still finding their role. It has always been reserved for those who already hold influence, or those being prepared to wield it. Previous holders of those keys were not simply caretakers of a space. They were gatekeepers of decisions that shaped the monarchy's future. Their proximity to that room meant proximity to power itself. And now, without announcement, without explanation, that same access has been placed in Catherine's hands. This is not just a gesture, it is a shift, a quiet but undeniable movement that places her within a circle that has historically remained closed, even to those closest to the crown. And with that access comes something far heavier than responsibility. It comes with expectation. The expectation to listen, to understand, and perhaps even to decide. Because once inside that lodge, neutrality is no longer an option. One must either uphold the balance or disrupt it. And that is where the unease begins to grow, because Catherine is not stepping into an empty space, she is stepping into a legacy of influence, one shaped by those who came before her, each leaving behind traces of decisions that were never meant to be fully understood. The question is not whether she will adapt to it. The question is what she will do with it. Because access like this does not remain passive for long. It demands action, whether immediate or inevitable. And yet, the most unsettling part isn't the place, it's the timing. Because this handover didn't happen in isolation, the timing is too precise to ignore. Just as tensions inside the royal family have quietly intensified, this secret handover unfolds behind closed doors. No coincidence, no accident. Every royal move is calculated, and this one feels urgent. So why now? Why Catherine? And what crisis or opportunity forced this decision to happen in complete silence? Because beneath the carefully maintained image of unity, something has been quietly unraveling. Not in headlines, not in public disputes, but in the subtle fractures that only those within the inner circle can truly feel. Conversations that end too quickly, decisions that no longer follow predictable patterns, a sense that the old rhythm of the monarchy, steady, controlled, almost unshakable, is beginning to falter under pressures that have not yet been named. And it is within this fragile atmosphere that the handover takes place, not as a formality, but as a response. The urgency of 1 minute ago is not just a dramatic phrase, it is a signal that whatever prompted this move reached a point where hesitation was no longer acceptable, because in an institution built on patience and tradition, urgency is rare. It appears only when something disrupts the balance so significantly that immediate action becomes the only option. And that is what makes this moment so unsettling. It suggests that something has already shifted behind the scenes, something powerful enough to force a decision that bypasses the usual layers of approval, scrutiny, and ceremony. And then there is Catherine. Her selection is not random, and it is certainly not symbolic. It is precise, calculated. She represents stability, yes, but also adaptability and ability to navigate complexity without exposing it. In a moment where tensions may be rising, placing her in control of access to the lodge feels like a move designed to contain, to manage, perhaps even to shield something from escalating further. Because when uncertainty grows, the monarchy does not react openly. It restructures quietly, and this feels like restructuring. Yet the deeper one looks, the more questions begin to surface. If Catherine is being positively owned at the center of this shift, what does that mean for everyone else? Particularly for those who would traditionally stand in that space. The absence of Prince William from the immediate focus of this moment is not a detail that can be overlooked. It introduces a layer of complexity that challenges expectation, not necessarily conflict, but certainly a rebalancing, a subtle repositioning that suggests roles are being adjusted in ways the public has not been prepared to understand. And behind that repositioning, there must have been agreement or perhaps disagreement, because decisions of this magnitude are never made in isolation. They are debated, weighed, and often resisted before they are finalized. The fact that this one emerged in silence suggests that whatever discussions took place were contained, controlled, and ultimately resolved without leaving visible traces, which only deepens the sense that something larger is being managed beneath the surface. That leads to the most critical question: who made the final call? Because in a structure as rigid as the monarchy, authority flows from the top. And if that authority has chosen to act swiftly and quietly, it implies awareness of a situation that cannot yet be disclosed, a situation that requires preparation, positioning, and perhaps even protection from external scrutiny. And that is where the tension becomes almost impossible to ignore, because this does not feel like a routine adjustment. It feels like a preemptive move, a strategic placement of someone trusted, capable, and controlled at the exact point where influence matters most. And that kind of move is never made without reason, which leaves one lingering possibility, one that cannot yet be confirmed, but cannot be dismissed either, that somewhere beyond what has been revealed, there is a crisis unfolding, not visible, not acknowledged, but real enough, not acknowledged, but real enough to force the monarchy into action. And if that is true, then this handover is not the beginning of the story. It is the response to something that has already begun. But if timing is everything, then the choice of Catherine reveals something even more profound about where power is truly shifting. For years, Catherine has been seen as poised, composed, predictable. But beneath that calm exterior lies a transformation few truly noticed. This isn't just a royal figure stepping into duty. This is a calculated ascent. The quiet acceptance of the Balmoral keys signals something far greater than responsibility. It signals control. And perhaps for the first time, Catherine is no longer waiting for the crown. She's already reshaping it, because her story was never meant to unfold like this. She entered the royal world as an outsider, someone expected to adapt, to observe, to follow a structure that had been in place long before her arrival. And for years, that is exactly what she appeared to do. She learned. She adjusted. She remained steady in moments where others faltered. But what seemed like quiet compliance was, in reality, something far more deliberate. It was preparation, a slow, disciplined understanding of how power truly operates, not in public gestures, but in private decisions. What sets Catherine apart is not just her composure, but her control, an emotional intelligence that allows her to navigate tension without revealing it. A discipline that turns silence into strategy. She does not react impulsively. She absorbs, calculates, and then moves with precision. And that is exactly why this moment, the acceptance of the Balmoral keys, feels so significant. Because it is not a beginning, it is the result of everything that came before it. Every observation, every adjustment, every moment where she chose restraint over reaction. The symbolism of what she has been given, cannot be ignored. This is not access granted for ceremonial purposes. It is access granted for influence, for involvement in matters that exist beyond public visibility. And with that access comes a shift in identity. She is no longer simply part of the monarchy's future, she is becoming part of its present power structure. Quietly, but unmistakably. And yet, what makes this transformation so compelling is the contrast between what is seen and what is not. To the public, Catherine remains composed, consistent, reassuring. But behind that image, something far more dynamic is unfolding, a role that is expanding beyond expectation, a presence that is no longer confined to traditional boundaries, because this moment suggests that she is already operating at a level that has not been formally acknowledged. There is also a psychological weight to what she has accepted, because the keys do not just open doors, they carry responsibility, expectation, and perhaps even pressure that cannot be shared. To step into that space is to accept that every decision, every choice, may have consequences that extend far beyond the present moment. And yet, there is no hesitation, no visible doubt, only a quiet acceptance that suggests she understands exactly what this means. And perhaps most striking of all is what this moment implies about her position relative to others. Because this is not a shared responsibility, it is a direct trust placed in her. A move that subtly, but powerfully, elevates her influence in a way that does not rely on title alone. It suggests independence, capability, authority that exists alongside, rather than beneath, traditional expectations. And that changes everything, because once that shift begins, it cannot be undone. Catherine is no longer simply preparing for a future role, she is actively shaping the present, and in doing so, she becomes something the monarch, why both needs and fears, a stabilizing force that can maintain control, or a transformative force that can redefine it entirely. And that is where the tension begins to build, because power, once recognized, rarely exists without challenge, especially within an institution built on hierarchy, tradition, and carefully maintained balance. And if Catherine is rising in this way, then it inevitably creates pressure elsewhere, pressure that may not remain hidden forever. Yet with every rise comes resistance, and not everyone inside the royal walls may be ready to accept this shift. In royal circles, silence is never empty, it's loaded. And since the moment Catherine received those keys, the silence has grown louder. No statements, no acknowledgements, just a quiet ripple moving through the palace. Because when power shifts this suddenly, someone always loses it. The real question is, who is watching this unfold with concern, anger, or fear? Because within the monarchy, silence is often the first sign of resistance. Not open defiance, not public disagreement, but something far more controlled, far more dangerous. It manifests in withheld reactions, in conversations that stop just short of clarity, in a deliberate refusal to acknowledge what has already happened. And right now, that silence feels deliberate, almost strategic, as if those affected are choosing their next move carefully, aware that reacting too soon could reveal more than they intend. There are always factions within any institution of power, but within the royal family, those divisions are rarely visible. They exist beneath the surface, shaped by years of proximity, expectation, and quiet competition. And moments like this, unexpected, unannounced, and deeply symbolic, have a way of exposing those divisions without ever naming them. Because when Catherine steps into a role that shifts influence, it does not happen in isolation, it creates imbalance. And imbalance, no matter how subtle, always draws attention from those who feel it most. For some, this may feel like displacement, not an official loss of status, but a quiet erosion of relevance. The kind that doesn't appear in titles or public appearances, but in access, in proximity to decision-making, in the unspoken understanding of who is now closer to the center of power and who is slowly being pushed outward. That shift, even when unacknowledged, carries emotional weight. It breeds uncertainty, and in some cases, resentment. There are also those who may view this not as a threat, but as a disruption, because the monarchy has always relied on structure, on predictability, on a carefully maintained order that ensures stability above all else. And Catherine's sudden elevation, particularly in such a private, controlled manner, challenges that order. It introduces a variable that cannot be easily categorized or contained. Is she reinforcing the system, or quietly redefining it? That question alone is enough to create tension, because if she is seen as a unifying force, then her presence strengthens the monarchy's ability to adapt and endure. But if she is perceived as a disruptor, someone whose influence extends beyond traditional boundaries, then her rise becomes something far more complicated, something that forces others to reconsider their own positions, their own influence, their own future within the institution. And it is within that uncertainty that alliances begin to shift, not dramatically, not visibly, but gradually. Conversations change tone, trust becomes more conditional, Loyalties once assumed are quietly reassessed, because when power begins to move even slightly, it creates a ripple effect that touches everyone within its reach. And no one can afford to ignore it. The absence of public reaction only intensifies this dynamic, because without an official narrative to guide interpretation, those within the palace are left to form their own conclusions. And those conclusions, shaped by personal perspective and private concern, rarely align perfectly. Some may see this as a necessary evolution, others may see it as a risk, but all of them understand one thing: this moment matters, and that understanding is what makes the silence so heavy. It is not the absence of response, it is the presence of calculation. A waiting period. A moment of stillness before something shifts again, because in an environment like this, silence is never the end of the story. It is the space where the next move is being prepared. But beyond personal rivalries, there's a deeper layer to this story, because the lodge itself may hold secrets no one expected Catherine to uncover. The keys don't just open doors, they unlock histories, and inside the Balmoral hunting lodge lies a past that has never been fully revealed. Private documents, hidden agreements, conversations that were never meant to leave those walls. Now Catherine stands at the threshold of it all. But what exactly has she stepped into? And what truths could be waiting in the shadows? Because places like this are never empty. They hold more than furniture, more than tradition, they hold memory. Not the kind that is written in official records or presented to the public, but the kind that lingers quietly, embedded in decisions that were never meant to be questioned. The lodge has long been rumoured to function as a vault, not of objects alone, but of understanding. A place where the monarchy's most sensitive realities have been preserved, protected, and, in some cases, deliberately buried. There are whispers carefully contained, never confirmed, of archives that exist beyond the formal structures of royal documentation. Files that did not appear in trial inventories. Correspondence that was never intended for public scrutiny. Agreements that shaped outcomes without ever being acknowledged. If even a fraction of this is true, then what Catherine now has access to is not just space, it is history in its rawest, most unfiltered form. And history, when left unguarded, has a way of rewriting everything. But access like this comes with weight, emotional weight, because uncovering the past is not a neutral act. It forces confrontation, it demands interpretation, and in some cases, it requires decisions about what should remain hidden and what can no longer be contained. Catherine is no longer just observing the monarchy from within. She is now in a position where she may have to face its most uncomfortable truths. Truths that could challenge not only public narratives, but private loyalties as well. And that is where her role becomes far more complex. She is not simply a witness to what lies within those walls. She is, whether by intention or circumstance, becoming a decision-maker. Because once something is known, it cannot be unknown, and the responsibility that follows is unavoidable. Does she preserve what she finds, protecting the institution at all costs? Or does she allow certain truths to surface, risking disruption in order to reshape what comes next? The danger is not just in the discovery, it is in the consequences, because some truths, once revealed, cannot be contained within the quiet walls of Balmoral. They ripple outward, affecting perception, trust, and ultimately, stability. And if the lodge holds even a fragment of what has long been speculated, then Catherine's position becomes more than influential, it becomes critical. She is no longer just part of the monarchy's future. She is now standing at the intersection of its past and its potential transformation. And perhaps that is why this access was granted, now, not as a reward, not as a gesture, but as preparation, because whatever is coming, whatever has already begun, may require an understanding of the past that only a place like this can provide. The kind of understanding that does not come easily, and certainly does not come without risk, because knowledge, in this context, is not passive, it is power. And power, when combined with uncertainty, becomes unpredictable. The more Catherine learns, the more her role evolves, the more she understands, the more she is forced to choose. And those choices, no matter how carefully made, will carry consequences that extend far beyond the lodge itself. And that is the unsettling truth at the center of it all. This is not just about access, it is about exposure. exposure to realities that have been carefully managed for generations, realities that, once seen, cannot simply be ignored or forgotten. And if those secrets are as powerful as they seem, then the implications of this handover may extend far beyond Balmoral itself. This isn't just a private moment, it's a signal, a shift, a quiet turning point that could redefine the monarchy's future, because when power is transferred in secrecy, it rarely stays hidden for long. Catherine's new role may not come with a title change, but its impact could be far greater than a crown. The question is no longer what happened, but what happens next. Because what has taken place inside Balmoral does not stay confined to its walls. It begins there, yes, silent, controlled, deliberate, but its consequences move outward, slowly at first, then with growing force. Catherine's position is no longer limited to expectation or preparation. It is active, present, and most importantly, it is influential in ways that cannot yet be publicly defined. This is how transformation begins within the monarchy, not through declarations, but through subtle shifts that eventually become impossible to ignore. There is now a growing sense that the structure itself may be evolving, not collapsing, not breaking, but adapting under pressure. Because the monarchy has always survived by adjusting to the world around it, even when it appears unchanged. And in moments like this, those adjustments become more visible to those who know where to look. Catherine's access to the lodge places her at a critical intersection where tradition meets necessity, where legacy meets the demands of a future that refuses to wait. And within that intersection, her role becomes more defined, even if it remains unspoken. She is no longer just a participant in royal duties, she is becoming part of the decision-making framework that shapes them, a presence that is consulted, considered, and perhaps even relied upon. And that shift, subtle as it may seem, carries enormous weight. Because influence within the monarchy has never been about titles alone, it has always been about proximity to the moments where real decisions are made. But this is not just about internal dynamics. There is also the question of perception. The monarchy exists not only as an institution, but as an image carefully maintained, carefully presented, and what happens behind closed doors often contrasts sharply with what is shown to the world. Catherine's new position exists within that contrast. Publicly, she remains composed, consistent, reassuring. Privately, however, her role may now extend far beyond what the public has been led to believe, and that gap between perception and reality is where tension begins to grow. Because if the public ever becomes aware of the extent of this shift, it could change how the monarchy is understood entirely. It could challenge assumptions about who holds influence, about how decisions are made, about where power truly resides. And once those questions begin to surface, they do not disappear easily. They demand answers. They create pressure, and pressure, when applied to an institution built on stability, can lead to outcomes that are difficult to predict. At the same time, this moment may represent something more hopeful, an evolution rather than a disruption. Catherine could become the figure who bridges the gap between tradition and transformation, maintaining the monarchy's identity while guiding it into a new era. But even that possibility carries its own risks, because change, no matter how carefully managed, always comes with uncertainty. And uncertainty, within a system that values control above all else, is never entirely comfortable. This is how new eras begin, not with a clear announcement, but with a quiet shift that gradually reshapes everything around it. Catherine's role, still undefined in public terms, may already be shaping decisions that will influence the monarchy for years to come, and whether that influence stabilizes or transforms the institution remains to be seen. Because once a shift like this begins, it does not reverse. It moves forward, gathering momentum, drawing others into its path, and those within the monarchy can feel it, even if they refuse to acknowledge it openly. Something has changed, something that cannot be undone. But as history has shown, every shift in power comes with consequences, and not all of them remain hidden. Secrets like this don't stay buried forever. All it takes is one leak, one insider, one moment of exposure, and everything changes. If the truth behind Catherine's private handover reaches the public, It could ignite questions the monarchy isn't prepared to answer. Why was it hidden? Who approved it? And what does it reveal about the power structure behind the scenes? Because once the world knows, there's no taking it back. Because in a world where information moves faster than control, silence is no longer protection, it's pressure waiting to break. The monarchy has long relied on discretion, on carefully managed narratives, on the understanding that what happens behind closed doors can remain there, but that assumption feels increasingly fragile. All it takes is a single moment, a misplaced word, a quiet observation shared with the wrong person, an insider who decides that silence is no longer worth maintaining, and the entire structure of secrecy begins to unravel. And if this moment were to surface, it would not emerge gently. It would explode into public view, drawing immediate attention not just for what happened, but for how it was hidden. Because the modern audience does not simply accept secrecy, they question it, they analyze it, they challenge it. And the idea that such a significant transfer of influence occurred without acknowledgement would raise concerns that extend far beyond curiosity. It would become a matter of trust. The media response alone would be relentless, every detail examined, every implication stretched to its limit. Analysts, commentators, and observers would attempt to piece together a narrative that the palace deliberately chose not to provide, and in that absence, speculation would take control, not measured, not restrained, but amplified. Because when official answers are missing, alternative interpretations fill the void, and those interpretations are rarely forgiving. Globally, the reaction would not be contained. The monarchy does not exist in isolation, it exists under constant observation, both domestically and internationally. And a revelation like this would trigger a wave of questions that reach far beyond the immediate event. Questions about transparency, about decision-making, about whether the institution still operates within the boundaries it claims to uphold. And once those questions begin, do not simply fade away, they build, they intensify. At the center of it all would be Catherine, not just as a participant, but as a figure expected to respond, to explain, to justify. And that expectation alone carries immense pressure, because how does one explain something that was never meant to be public? How does one clarify a decision that was made in silence, possibly for reasons that cannot be revealed without causing further disruption? Her composure, her control qualities that have defined her rise, would be tested in ways she has never experienced before. Inside the palace, the reaction would be equally intense, though far less visible. Damage control would begin immediately. Strategies would be formed, narratives constructed, responses carefully measured, because once something like this becomes public, the goal is no longer to prevent exposure, it is to manage its impact, to contain the fallout before it spreads further. But containment, in a moment like this, is never guaranteed. And underlying all of it is the most dangerous consequence of all the erosion of trust, because the monarchy's strength has always depended on perception. The belief that it operates with a certain level of integrity, of stability, of continuity. And when that belief is challenged, even slightly, it creates a ripple effect that can alter how everything else is viewed. One question leads to another, one doubt opens the door to more, and suddenly, what once seemed unquestionable becomes uncertain. That is the true risk of exposure. Not just what is revealed, but what it leads to. The deeper investigations, the renewed scrutiny, the sense that there may be more beneath the surface than anyone realized. Because once attention is drawn to one secret, it rarely stops there, it begins to search for others. And yet, even as the risk grows, one truth remains: this moment may have Alaria. Why changed everything, whether the world sees it or not. No announcement, no ceremony, no witnesses. And yet, one of the most significant power shifts in modern royal history may have just occurred behind closed doors. Catherine now holds more than keys, she holds influence, access, and perhaps control over a future still unfolding. The monarchy may appear unchanged from the outside, but inside, something irreversible has already begun. Because moments like this are not designed to be seen. They are designed to exist quietly, to take root beneath the surface, where their impact can grow without interference. What happened inside Balmoral was not simply a gesture of trust, it was a transfer of weight, a shift that carries consequences far beyond the physical act itself. The keys, small and unassuming, now represent something far more powerful: entry into a space where decisions are shaped before the world ever becomes aware of them. And Catherine's position within this shift cannot be understated. She is no longer moving toward influence. She is already within it, positioned at the center of something that feels both deliberate and irreversible. Because once access like this is granted, it does not simply fade away. It establishes presence, it creates expectation, and over time it builds authority that does not rely on titles or public recognition. It exists quietly, but it exists firmly. What makes this transformation so compelling is the contrast it creates. To the outside world, the monarchy continues as it always has: structured, composed, unchanging. But behind that image, something far more dynamic is unfolding. A recalibration of roles, a subtle but undeniable shift in who holds proximity to power. And that contrast between what is seen and what is hidden is where the true story lies. Because the monarchy has always depended on that balance, on maintaining an image that conceals the complexity beneath it. But this moment challenges that balance, not openly, not dramatically, but in a way that feels permanent. Because once something changes at this level, it does not return to what it was before. It evolves, slowly, quietly, but inevitably. Catherine's presence within this space signals that evolution is already underway, that the monarchy is not standing still, even if it appears to be. There is also an emotional weight to this transformation, one that cannot be measured or easily defined, because stepping into this role means carrying responsibilities that are rarely spoken about, expectations that are never fully explained. It means becoming part of decisions that may never be publicly acknowledged, yet shape the direction of everything that follows. And that kind of responsibility does not come without cost. It demands resilience, it demands control, and above all, it demands acceptance of a role that exists beyond recognition. And still, despite everything that has been revealed, there remains a lingering uncertainty, because this moment, as significant as it is, does not provide answers, it creates questions. What will Catherine do with this access? How will her influence shape what comes next? And perhaps most importantly, what else remains hidden, waiting to surface when the time is right? Because this is not an ending, it is a beginning disguised as silence, a turning point that has already taken place, whether the world acknowledges it or not. And as time moves forward, the effects of this moment will begin to reveal themselves subtly at first, then with increasing clarity. Because in the world of royalty, the most powerful moments are never the ones we see, they're the ones we're never meant to know about. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.